If you prefer not to be on camera or have your name associated while we're recording, please go ahead and change that. We've got an exciting hour for you coming up, looking at our topic today. And just a little bit of background before we get going about CEL and the project we're part of, and what the topic is today. So here we are, we're having a welcome from my good self, has just popped up on the screen. And just a recap, for those of you that aren't so familiar with Community Energy London, we're a membership body of groups and organisations that tackle issues around sustainable energy across the capital. This could include anything from looking at putting some solar PV on a community building, right through to energy advice projects, tackling fuel poverty, electric vehicle on a community level, infrastructure. And we have been going now for, oh gosh, I think it's about 8 years. I'm not sure. I should have not started that sentence, should I? Anyway, we're doing a series of events. This is the 5th of 6 events, and we have been looking at how to support and boost or create more action around helping those most vulnerable who are suffering, particularly around energy cost prices and being susceptible to the negative impacts of fuel poverty. We've known it's been a problem for years. When this project was originally conceived, we could not have imagined that we are where we are today with the cost of living crisis, in particular energy costs. And there is still a lot that can be done to help people in this situation, despite the spiraling horrendous costs. Now, it's all very well knowing how to help people. It's all very well having designed a beautiful project incorporating things from energy cafes or telephone advice or workshops for the community, or training frontline workers, or doing home visits. But unless you actually connect with those people that really need the help, first of all, you will get the usual suspects who are really good at finding things to help them out of the situation that they find themselves in. They are also ones that might respond to, a phone call, a letter, to find out about what's available in their local area, and they have agency in that way. But unfortunately, many of the people that we really want to be able to get in there and support alleviating things for them aren't usually the sorts of people that will put themselves forward to access this type of help. Often they don't even know, or it occurs to them there is any help that could be done to help them. They often aren't people that are ones that are kind of seldom heard from, and they don't know how we can actually help them. So how do we find them? How do we connect with them? How can we be of more service to them so they are going to feel less pain and free up more income to buy, crazy things like fresh food and books for their school and things like this? So today we're going to be hearing from Stefan, who's a professor of human geography at University of Manchester. He's also the specialty chief editor at Frontiers in Sustainable Cities, and I'm really looking forward to finding out about the research that he's been involved with looking at community energy and advice. Then we're going to be hearing from Oakley from Transition Towns Ilford. So I'm really happy to hear what they've been up to since I've last been more involved with them. And then a pan-London approach, we're going to hear from Nicola from Shine London, who are part of a organisation that is set up to support people out of this situation. And there's lots that can be done. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Stefan Buzas Jaskowski, and I'm really sorry if I've just murdered your surname, Stefan. But welcome, and we're really happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Alex. Just to make sure, can you hear me okay? And can
Perfect.
you see me? Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And I really appreciate the invitation, the opportunity to speak with you today. It's such an important topic, and I think it's just at the current moment in time, its relevance is even greater. I have a presentation to share. Let me just see. Can I do it? Let me just see if I can. Yeah, I can share my screen.
I've got your slides up if you would like them instead.
Oh, well then
that's the one you sent the other day.
Well. I will yeah, it's all right. I mean, I'm not going to strictly keep to the slides because I will talk to specifically some of the aims of the workshop, but they are a useful guide. So just one thing to say, I am a researcher in fuel poverty and energy justice, and I've been looking at energy advice for a while now through a number of projects alongside colleagues at the University of Manchester and also Liverpool John Moores, such as Neil Simcock, Amy Crowther, Amish Sarpotar. So this sort of presentation summarizes some of those findings. And I will talk to this particular, through a discussion with Alex highlight, I will talk to particularly the question of recruitment, engagement, but also how we get people on board in relation to different constituencies that may exist. So maybe if we can just go on to the next slide, please. So what I want to explore really is how we deliver energy advice at the local level. And there's sort of three principles that I really want to highlight here. The principle of equity is really important because we'll be looking at fuel poor households, the people who are struggling, who are vulnerable. So we want to make sure that advice allows for and enables equal participation in society, in low carbon transition, but also helps people deal with some of the challenges they have the everyday level. And engagement is another key element, and we want to make sure that we engage everyone. And so we explore how we engage different constituencies, how we work with people who are, one term is hard to reach, who are underserved, underrepresented, and so on. And also energy efficiency is really the cornerstone. So we're really interested in the delivery of energy efficiency measures and also a wider range of sustainable energy measures also around sustainable heat. Now, I'm going to talk there's a range of projects that I could talk about, but I will focus primarily on Greater Manchester, where I'm primarily, I'm based and I mainly work here. We've sort of been trialing a living lab approach here, and I'll talk about what that is, but it's really the idea is really to test and try out different approaches to evaluate. So to kind of evaluate as you go along, appreciating how messy this is, and also to improve as you go along in the delivery of energy advice. And so this presentation has different elements which I'm bringing together. All of us in this team do different things. So I'm particularly interested in the sort of overarching framing of energy advice. Neil's work is more on the importance of energy advice. Amy's worked on, so they're not here with me, I'm sort of representing the team here. Amy's worked on role of local government intermediate organizations. And Amish, who's now in base, actually has moved over to base. Works particularly on questions of who's vulnerable, how we might support different groups. So we go on to the next slide, please. I wonder why that's not, there should be something in those boxes. I don't know if something's happened and the sort of information in the boxes has disappeared, but that's all right. I can describe what's in them. So would
you prefer to switch over to your one?
Could I maybe please do that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So if you enable me to screen share,
I have done, and I've stopping share.
Fantastic.
There you go. Sorry about that.
So much. No problem. Well, this happens all the time with technology, so that's fine. Let me see. Can you see my presentation now? So yeah, there it is. So hopefully you can see the information in the boxes now. So
perfect.
It's all right.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for allowing me to screen share as well. So right, what we do in these different iterations, I'm going to tell you what we did in the last 3 iterations of this living lab. And I should say it's basically the idea of the iteration of a living lab is a whole set of activities that you start with, and you bookend them with focus groups. And the idea, and then in the middle is the delivery of the advice. So at the beginning and the end, you really evaluate what you do, and you try to do with the focus groups, which are sort of representative as much as you can of the wider community that you're delivering the advice to. You try to evaluate what you've done and whether you've actually achieved your aims, what the challenges have been, what's been done well, and so on. So in fact, each one of these iterations is sort of designed and conceived at that focus group, of course, with based on a preset design around energy advice, but of course then it's discussed and debated within that constituency. And within each round we do 2 advisor visits. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, that we do an initial visit and then we do a follow-up. And of course not everyone wants to follow up, but with the follow-up we don't just evaluate, we obviously looked at what's happened, whether the advice has led to particular schemes being taken up or referrals, or we look at whether there's been any change in behaviors or any of sort of the actual practical advice elements. But we also evaluate the effectiveness of the advice. So we collect those notes and we can discuss them at the workshop. It is fairly labor intensive, but it has allowed us to improve the advice as it's been delivered. And I should say, the iterations I'm talking to today were all just prior to the pandemic. So the last iteration was during the pandemic, and we've continued. So I'm still analyzing the data after that last iteration, where we've sort of gone back to physical visits. So the iteration that was in during the pandemic was all remote. So either it was by phone or online. And another element of this, so aside from the advisor visits and the follow-ups, is the energy cafes, which are also sort of test beds for the stuff that we do, but also they are ways of engaging different communities. And they're not just, the way we've done the energy cafes is they're not just places where people talk about the challenges that they face, and then that feeds into the advice, but we also have tried to get people from the local council, other agencies present at the cafes as well, so that they can hear directly what the challenges are. And we try to sort of think about co-produced policy solutions. So it's not just that's what happens in level of households and residences, and that's it, we move on. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide, just to think about some of the effectiveness of advice. I mean, we did see with these follow-ups that we got quite a lot of reductions in the number of people who were able to pay their bills on time. So I have to say, if I were to think where some of the advice has been most effective, it has been actually in helping people consolidate their bill payments, consolidate debt, think about tariffs, think about whether they're using the kind of profile that they have in relation to their energy provider is the right one. So that level of that intermediation between energy providers and households has been crucial, and that's where we've seen the greatest changes. Not necessarily through some of the other measures, but this has been really, really important. I mean, these are some testimonials. I'm conscious we don't have much time, so I'll move through them quite fast in terms of what the benefits have been, and you probably know this, but again, one thing to say is it really is about where to get help. The advice is, and that's one of the main selling points, is that intermediation, that connection between services that people are maybe not aware of, or don't have the capacity to access, or don't have the initiative, etc., to access. And so that's really where we see that referral to additional services is where we really see some of the greatest benefits, and of course the improvement of engagement with energy suppliers. In relation to energy efficiency, this is where it gets really tricky with fuel poor households, because you can't, a lot of the schemes are, the demands are that people need to reduce energy consumption. We know that actually consumption needs to go up, but there are situations where you can consolidate people's heating patterns. So you actually make sure that they're a bit smarter about how they particularly heat the home, but also things like light and so on. And that helps a lot, as well as these small measures that advisors bring with them. Again, they're a major selling point. Things like draft excluders and LEDs and so on. With behavioral changes, I think, and that's really, again, the key thing for me is that sort of mental health element. I don't know whether this is the same in the areas where everyone else here works, but what we've seen almost, it's a ubiquitous challenge, is the question around social capacity, social capital, and particularly mental health issues. We see so many mental health problems across the cohort that we help. And I should say, I didn't really talk about this, but around 80% of the people who we support through this lab are benefit claimants or eligible for benefits. And they do mostly arrive, the recruitment is mostly through things like social services, GPs, although of course they can self-refer, and it's very, very wide eligibility criteria. I'm going to skip through this, but I just want to say one more thing, which is the kind of work that the advisors do. And here it's really, I would say it's at least 5 things. So it's sort of helping people with switching, helping people with payments and the consolidation of payments, mental health support and mental health measures, mental health support around that, but also small measures as well around energy efficiency, and also particularly communications. And that communication takes place at a lot of levels and takes place across different agencies, but also in relation to utility suppliers as well. I don't really have time to talk about this. I don't actually know how much time I've got left. So I am not going to talk extensively about this, but one other element that has been covered by our work is really how and what sort of constituencies we might be helping. And we have found that there are groups of people who particularly need help. And I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but we've been particularly sensitive around vulnerabilities around ethnicity. We found that ethnic minorities tend to engage less with energy suppliers and tend to be on fixed tariffs more. We found that age is another key element of vulnerability, and also gender. I don't have really time, and disability as well. I'm not going to have time to talk about this, but we've tried to develop sensitive measures to these areas and also try to find area-based targeting where we know that there are there's a greater proportion of these vulnerabilities present. And another element of this, of course, has been working closely with local government in relation to finding and developing strategies to support households, to access funding and to make funding more transparent, and also raise awareness of the support that is available. Having said that, the importance of other agencies under individuals is really crucial here. So in a sense, then we bring in that element of the third sector organization and the element of recruitment that matters here. And I think that's what people see. It's the provision of knowledge in terms of practical insights and understanding of local context. It's the element of trust, and it's a clear point of contact. And on the last point, I just want to say what has really been prevalent is that having visibility in the community, physical visibility, really matters. In-person communication. And we found that during the pandemic, advice was really not nearly as effective as it was before, when we were able to connect with people on an actual individual level, going to their homes and supporting them in that way. So I just very briefly, in terms of how we can help people. So I think we are working in a situation where we've got multiple actors, we've got different projects, we've got different individuals, we've got different vulnerabilities. And so in that lab, what we've been trying to do is actually navigate this very complex landscape of constantly changing circumstances. So if there's one takeaway lesson from here is that you actually have to dynamically think about the advice you're providing and reflect upon it and change it on the go, because circumstances change very rapidly. Right, so very quickly, so just some kind of concluding thoughts. I'm going to start with the last one. I think we need a national energy advice service. I would like to connect with people and organizations who are thinking along these lines, because I think we can't move towards an inclusive low carbon future, or for that matter, address the persistent and deep challenges around fuel poverty without a concerted energy advice effort at the national scale. So that energy advice service, a bit like the National Health Service, I'm thinking, could really go much further in terms of developing all of these dynamic forms of support that are needed. And in that sense, what I want to say really is that energy advice, at first point there, is not about energy. It's about multiple vulnerabilities, multiple forms of low carbon transition, multiple forms of uncertainty. And that's what we're trying to do here, is we're bringing all that together through that intermediation that we provide between households and the energy system and the energy providers and other agencies. And in that sense, networking with local councils, with third sector organizations is really important, as of course is the need to fund more of this and be aware of how important it is. So that's all I've had to say today. I hope I haven't extended beyond my my sort of time allocation, but thank you so much for listening to what our group had to say. Cheers. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Stefan. That was fascinating. I think we might need to have a separate event at some point, looking at what you and your team have been up to. And it's also very useful to hear that one of your overarching conclusions was that we need a national energy advice service. Community Energy England actually submitted recently a proposal to BEIS about the very thing, because we used to have one in the EAC network many years ago, which some of us can still remember, and things that was a long time ago now, but yeah, we really need that. I agree. But if anybody has any questions, do either pop them in the chat, or we'll have time for questions to all of our wonderful speakers at the end of this. And now I can see Nicola is lined up as the next speaker. Is that correct, Catherine?
Yeah, but you wanted to switch Shine and Ilford around. You said
Okay.
Shine was next.
Okay.
I'm hoping Nicola is here. I can't see her name.
Ah, okay. Well, in that case, that means we can hear from, is Okla here?
It's Olcay. Olcay, hi.
Olcay, sorry, I forgot.
It's all right, it's all right.
Olcay, I remembered it when we were seeing each other regularly, but
Yes, that's right.
I was doing it phonetically then. My apologies. I hope you're well.
Don't worry. Yeah,
And as I introduce what Transition Town have been up to, they are an example of a group that has just got going with doing an energy advice and fuel poverty tackling process. They've got a very hyper local approach, and I'm very happy to see you today and hear from you. So over to you.
Thank you. Sorry, apologies everyone. I haven't got a presentation. I think last night I was asked to talk a few minutes, so you just have to listen to me without any presentation, I'm afraid. So I will start with our transition town, if it is okay. So I assume that everyone in this group is sort of aware of what transition town movement is like. Is that okay? Yeah. So I don't need to go to the background what transition town movement is about, but as you know, it's been around since 2006 and so on. So in Ilford is a part of London Borough of Redbridge, East London, and we set up our transition town in 2006. We started with like a pop-up cafe, setting up a pop-up cafe and like a bike, doctor bike, a couple of times a month. And since then it's grown. So we've been running a repair cafe for the last about 10 to 12 months. And we are creating a edible community garden, forest garden in our local park. So we've got lots of other projects going on. So the Energy Cafe started as a partnership between, there is a local church called Vine Church, and one of our steering committee members in the transition town is quite active in that church. So they've got some funding from Community Energy London to run like a project about sustainability project in the church. And part of that condition of that funding was that they also had to do something for the community. So when Ruth, her name is Ruth Musgrave, when she brought it to Transition Town, we decided that it could be a joint project between that local faith group and the Transition Town movement. So that is how it started. And we've contacted Alex, Alex, you are there. This is SELSE, shortly you'll call your organization, Southeast London Community Energy Group. Yeah.
Yes.
So so we've got SELSE to train energy champions, and I think it started in May. I remember the first session was the first week in May. So we contacted our networks, and we've got initially, I think, 17 people who wanted to be trained in energy champions. And in the end, I think even though 17 people signed, we ended up training 12 people. And so those people are from local community groups, local faith centers, some people from Transition Town, so we, following the training, we set up a small working group. So Transition Town does a lot of projects, as I said, and some of those projects are run by the subgroups. So the Energy Cafe has got a subgroup now. It's sort of semi-independent. We've still got, like myself, I'm in the steering committee of the Transition Town, and there's another colleague, Sobia. Is Sobia here? Yeah. And Sobia and myself, we are both steering committee members of the Transition Town, and we are in the subgroup of the Energy Cafe. So I think the good thing in our case was that we've got some very active local people who are passionate about this issue, and young people, which is great, because as you know, when it comes to sort of finding volunteers for these type of projects, it's usually difficult to attract young people, but we are lucky that we've got a couple of young people, very energetic, with project management background. And I mean, it's quite amazing, really, you know, how difficult it is to arrange meetings of voluntary groups. But our planning meetings are at the moment every week, every Thursday, we sort of meet without, missing any week. Even there are about 5-6 people in the planning committee. Even if only 2 people can make the meeting, we still go ahead with the meeting. And I think that has been, I mean, it is obviously a very recent project. So far, we run 5 energy cafes, and 4 of them were in the local library in Central Ilford. And we also decided to reach out to more community centers, children's centers, disability centers, and so on. And we had one in local children's center about a couple of weeks ago, which was very successful, and they want us back. So we'll go for another energy cafe there. And the local disability group contacted us, or we contacted them. So we in the process of arranging one session with them, and we want to do more in different community centers and in different faith places. And we also in the process of, because what happened is, even though we, the session that Alex ran for us, which was excellent, we only trained about 12 energy champions. So at the moment it's down to about 7. And so the other 5, some of them were from community centers, local community centers. They said they found it very useful, and they take that information back to their groups and so on, and they're using it, and they're running their little local groups, but they're not part of sort of our energy cafe. They can't commit to it. So we decided to run another training session. We want to have more volunteers. So we are in the process of applying for funding, and our vision is obviously to have more energy cafes, to have more people trained, and also what we found out from some of the sessions is most people that come to see us are tenants. There's a huge private sector tenancy sector in Redbridge, and they are unsure about if the landlord will be prepared to do some of the work or to apply for some of the funding that's available. So we decided to liaise with the local, with our local council here, and found out that they run regular landlords forum. So we're planning to go to the next landlords forum to talk to the landlords. So that will be our sort of first, like a joint work with the local council. And the other thing is, I suppose, I mean, I don't know if any of us sort of planning to start the energy cafes, but the one good thing in our case was, because as Ilford Transition Town, we've been running regular repair cafes in the local library. So we started the energy cafes along the repair cafe. So in a way, initially, even though we haven't done much publicity, we already had people coming for the repair cafe, and the interest was great, because when people were coming to the repair cafe, we started talking to them also about, we also running the energy cafe as part of the repair cafe. And so we've been getting our sort of clients from the repair cafe, but now the word is going out and people are coming just to see us. And we also in the process of we've got, actually, it sounds sort of so grand that we got some marketing publicity person in our little group. So we're preparing leaflets and banner. We're doing a banner now. So when we go to different community centers and the library, so we can advertise ourselves. So I think that's all I want to say. So Sobia, did I leave anything out? If Sobia is here.
I can't see Sobia actually.
Oh, she's not here. Okay.
No, I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay. If I remember anything else, I'll come back later on. But that's me for the time.
Oh, that was brilliant, and it was so good to get a live update on what you guys have been up to. It's fantastic. The interesting thing is that you were very energy efficient by bolting on what you do with the energy advice to an activity you already did that had a sort of foothold in the community. And local libraries are well known to have a real cross section of people that you might not be able to connect with or engage with in any other way, shape or form. So that's really great to hear what you've been up to. I've tried to contact Nicola without Joy. So what we can do is open it up, I think, a bit wider to start to look at, in a bit more detail at how the issues. She's just calling me now. So if Lorraine or Catherine, if you could get the questions in the chat looked at, and I'll just speak to Nicola.
Perfect. Okay, so if we ask, we'll move the spotlight, and Lorraine, could you have a look at the questions in the chat and just see if there are any?
Yeah.
If not,
there's one for Stefan.
Oh,
what percentage of hard to reach people did you engage? Was there word of mouth? Any advertising in local community groups and GP surgeries? Did you anticipate a target number? Your work sounds excellent, by the way. And that's from Joseph.
Thank you. Yes, I did respond to that in the questions, so in the chat, but just to really summarize, so we didn't really define how to reach in the project, so it's really hard for me to judge because we don't have a benchmark against to judge it. But I would say that based on the evidence, and we're still collecting that, and because the work is ongoing, but I would say that roughly about 30 or 40% of the people who we engage in the lab would have not otherwise received energy advice, or would have not otherwise done anything about this. So if that would be the definition of hard to reach, then that would be the number roughly. I can't give you a definite number because we've not done all the checks yet. And yeah, I also responded, we've advertised quite widely, mainly through leafleting, and that we do that everywhere where we can. So if you have community events, if you've got, of course, GP surgeries, job centers, anything that's in the community that people can access, libraries as well. So there are leaflets and things like that. And people are aware, we try to make people aware that like who prescribes help, that they can also prescribe this service. And yeah, so for each iteration, so we're part of what's called the Local Energy Advice Partnership, which is a wider scheme which has many more households. But for our sort of test bed advice, we have a 300 target, household target for each iteration. And we tended to exceed that. We got more than we expected. On the first, in the first instance, when we went first to do the first visit. However, when we did the second visit, the follow-up, that was really, that was much more challenging. So we would get up to sometimes between 50 and 60, but I think one iteration was like 30% of households only came back saying they wanted a follow-up visit. So that was always challenging to do that follow-up with the same people. They didn't feel that they wanted to engage again. In the profile, we're still sort of analyzing the profiles of those who did and those who didn't. And maybe, to some extent, maybe it's because people didn't think they needed any more advice. But there are also others who I think might have not, well, I don't know. It's very complicated, but, and I don't want to prejudice all of the findings that we've had, because there's a lot of information that's come out through the focus groups. But I think also people do find it, yeah, they're reluctant to give data out. So they also feel that there's that they might, whatever they've done, they might feel like there's a little element of additional surveillance that sort of spooks them a little bit when with that follow-up visit. So they don't want to do it. But nevertheless, we did get people coming back and saying it was positive. So that's an element of delivery we need to think about, how many visits we do and how we make this maybe not as intrusive as it might be for some people. I don't know if there's any more questions. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Stefan. Cynthia,
Yes.
I think you wanted to ask some questions.
Yes, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Fab.
Right.
I am so sorry, guys. Hello.
Hi, Nicola. We're just having a
Hey,
question
Nick.
from Cynthia, and then we can come back to you. Thanks.
No worries. My apologies to everyone. Thank you.
Right. Okay, just to kind of put a bit of context in this, I've worked in sustainability for quite a while, but I'm here representing a local church today who are very much involved in some of this stuff. Now, it's very interesting to hear you talking about the hard to reach category of people, but I actually, through my work with Moneywise, which is a credit union in the Northeast, and through some research that we did with the local voluntary and community sector, we found that actually there is a harder to reach group. And these are actually the professionals within the voluntary and community sector itself, and probably other people in that professional base. Because when we were talking about financial literacy and financial capability and how we could help their clients, we heard stories of £25,000 worth of debt on credit cards, of fear of not being able to, and the shame that these professionals felt because of that. And I think it's, first of all, we cannot underestimate the amount of shame that people feel about not being able to pay the bills, about not being able to manage that. And I think we need to widen the net to enable these people to feel safe. And sometimes that's a case of going and offering to help their clients, at which point they will open up themselves. You know, they will actually be attending, advice sessions for themselves while they're supporting somebody else. And I don't think we can underestimate the value of that or the necessity for that. Secondly, I think one of the things that also goes along with this, I'm currently working for Living Streets, which is the national charity for everyday walking. And we're working with Transport for Greater Manchester and Transport for West Midlands, etc., on the other side of energy, which is about petrol costs. You know, about encouraging people who work to use more fuel efficient ways of getting to work, to be more active using cycling and walking, and enabling them to do that by good journey planning. Also working with the schools so that the school run is 20% of the week's problems in congestion. So if we could reduce the number of parents who feel that they must drive their child by car to school, then this would actually be important too. So I would strongly recommend that we work with the credit unions and with active travel charities, and possibly even Active Travel England, now it is beginning to form, to actually widen that net and create a more integrated, joined up thinking way of working.
Thank you for your comment, Cynthia. Was there a question in there for?
The main question was, how are we working with partnerships such as, you know, Andy Burnham and the mayor's structure in places like Manchester, and how are you looking to widen that net? How, you know, have you considered this? And if so, how are you going to do it? Because I see it as very important.
Yes, within the community energy sector, we couldn't do anything at all in any of our capacities without working in partnership with other people. And we realized that it isn't just about energy advice, but it's a whole raft of things around social justice issues, whether that's climate change, whether that's social wealth equality, all the things across the spectrum. But what I would just like to do now actually is bring in our last speaker for a quick whistle stop tour of who Shine is, what you do, and how you connect with the seldom heard from or hard to reach people. So welcome to Nicola. Thank you for joining us.
And for everyone's time, I do apologise.
Thank you for joining us, and I will hand over to you now, if that's okay.
Of course, it's only brief. Any questions are welcome. So basically, we're the Shine Energy Advice team. So we help with basic stuff to start with energy, but we do a lot more of a broader sort of spectrum of what we do. We try not to signpost as much as we can. We do stuff like do forms for people, you know, so it's all done for them, because if there's a lot going on, it can be difficult to access, you know, like you're getting loads of numbers. So first of all, we'll do maybe an energy doctor to the home. So we do energy efficient light bulbs, look at bills, look if you're in debt, reflective panels for radiators, draft proofing around doors, windows, that type of thing, only small measures. Maybe look at getting half price water. We can also, tariff wise at the moment, there's not much room for negotiation or moving. So it's better if you're on a variable, which we've never said for years, rather than a fixed. But we'll give you advice on that. If we need to liaise with an energy company on your behalf, and what we tend to do is once we take on a case, if it's not just sort of the generic stuff, it'll be our name, we're a small team, so you haven't got to go back, explain yourself again, put pillars posts. So we will literally be like, we'll take on your case. If we need to liaise with energy companies, if it's ongoing for months, we'll do that for you. And then there's other stuff like if people need befriending, we've got access to food bank vouchers. Got off the top of my head, like fire safety, especially if someone's a hoarder. It can be like affecting, like maybe sort of like an issue if there was a fire, PSR, so private services register. There's something as well, bags of taste, if we can get people like a call to maybe like do like cheaper meals so they can save money other places. And what we tend to do as well, so we always try to do a colleagues monitoring. So instead of just reaching out sort of like to big teams, we try and find niche places that we're probably not engaging with, whether it be smaller groups, whether it be a certain community, or some people are less likely to sort of access our information. And we've also got big words. If their first language isn't English, no problem, we'll look at that. If BSL, if they're British Sign Language, we will also get someone round. Someone with domestic violence, if they only want, we've just got a female one, we've only got a team of 4 energy doctors, and we do the whole of London, even though we're Islington based, so it's quite like, we're a tiny team. But you know, if they just would like a woman to go around, if maybe they've got PVP, which is potentially a violent person, that maybe they need 2 people to go around. So we're trying to be as inclusive as possible, and trying to find sort of ways to promote in like niche places that maybe the access is not getting there. I'm trying to think, there's loads of other like taxi cards. So even though we don't try and pry at all, it'll become like me and you talking. It's like, how's your day? Oh, I've got kids, or this is happening, or maybe we can help with this. And it's sort of like maybe maximum 10-minute conversation, unless it's complex, that we will address needs of like, oh, there might be, for instance, someone who can't leave the house, but we can get a library to come around with books or DVDs. So it's all the little things, and we all share information like with you guys. It's nice to know what we can help like with as a community. So that's pretty much me.
Thank you, Nicola, for that whistle-stop tour of the Shine services. A couple of questions. A few people are wondering, you know, if you're pan-London or not. And I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about how you find to connect with the people that may have not connected with your services in any other way. So how to kind of those seldom heard from people. What's the sort of Shine approach to that? Thank you.
So what we tend to do, obviously Islington is probably an easier given because we have access. We haven't got access to a lot of information because of data protection, but they've engaged with us before, or we know they're on a certain benefit. So we send out mail, like a big mail out. So it'll be like, you might be entitled to X, Y, and Z. So when it comes to the other boroughs, because it's sort of more sort of outreach, we will, for instance, Tower Hamlets, we know has got a very it's quite poor in sort of and stuff they're getting. So probably one of the poorest boroughs in London, if not the. So we will go out. So we will go to do promotional events. We will engage with even smaller communities, whether it be, I feel like there's certain communities that find it a little bit harder to engage because, for one, they're just very proud, they don't want anything, and what we do is free, and they're like, no, I'm fine. So what we try and do is monitor every month who is giving us a lot of referrals, who we're engaging with, and then try between us, because we've all got a little bit of, I think, like for instance, there might be one team member who's really passionate in mental health, there might be one in disabilities, there might be one who's good, like we've got Sue who's great with like all of like the food banks, or sort of like anything, you know, like sort of the smaller communities. So we try and use everyone's sort of knowledge and work together and promote where we can. Again, though, if anyone's got anything to send over via shine.islington.gov.uk, maybe it'll be beneficial. We can't say yes to everything at the moment, but we can try and like even turn up for an hour or do like this type of thing just to let everyone know, like what we do. So what was that question? How much? What was that? Sorry, I've just see it flash down.
The question is, how much are you able to access targeted funding for your work? This is to all the speakers, by the way. Are you using the BAME professional philanthropy through community foundations or local/London Assembly networks?
Sorry, this is completely out of my remit. I'm an NG advisor on the ground.
No worries.
I don't do funding. I'm so sorry. I don't know. Sort of, I wouldn't want to sort of just say anything for the point of it. I really don't know. So I know we get funding across from Mayor of London, X, Y, and Z, but we're very much just sort of funded through main sources. I don't know all the alternative ones. I really don't know. The best thing for that is to go through shineisn't.gov.uk, hire from wherever. Could you, if you want to break down where we get funding from exactly. But to be honest, it's the same as when we're asked for feedback. We're dealing with thousands of people. We're a small team. Unless it's sort of relevant to us trying to push forward, it's not something we just give, because we'll have people all the time just asking us for information. We can't always just give that. I haven't got time to give that and break it down or send over sort of that sort of thing. But it's more than sort of welcome if you want to go through Shine at Islington.
Thank you, Nicola. Yeah, like many advice services,
Yeah,
you're absolutely inundated at the moment, and you know, it's horrendous. So that's why we need more people to be doing things in the community, to signpost and to kind of basically, you know, we can be like, as energy champions can be sort of triaging and signposting to people that really need home visits, which is more of a resource hungry activity than energy cafe, and that's less resource hungry than telephone advice service, for example. So there is a kind of, you know, a triangle model, which I will do something about one day, about how that kind of works. But yeah, there are different ways to tackle this. So just that question to the other speakers, I know about Transition Town Ilford, Knowledge Days looking, and your team and Sobia looking at, you had some money from the London Community Energy Fund as part of a bundle of work to look at getting some solar PV and LED lighting onto Vine Church, and then it was to look at doing the Energy Champions training, which I did with my freelancer hat on. So there are, and then up to the you know, like I've just seen a question from Vicky, which is from Habitats and Heritage, and that's a redress funded project, and there's that's a 3-borough approach. So there are also pockets around London where there is coverage by the Warmer Homes GLA outreach, and there's a kind of mixture of tapestry of, it could be Shine, it could be Celsea, it could be or Groundwork London through the South London Healthy Homes Partnership. There's a couple of other kind of organizations in there as well. But even if there's that kind of official coverage, we need to enhance by doing more community energy work, and because quite often we can reach people that otherwise, you know, outreach or marketing wouldn't touch otherwise. You know, the GLA might be able to ask all councils to email everybody that gets council tax benefit or something, but if my next door neighbor doesn't read emails and she speaks English as a second language, and I speak the same language as my kind of, you know, my mother tongue, my native tongue, then me saying, oh, I've heard about this, and you know, that word of mouth, and then they get to talk to someone in person, that's so much more powerful and more effective, because she wouldn't have been picked up in any other way. Just to come back to any last thoughts from our wonderful speakers today. I have put in the chat, I'll tell you a little bit more about the subsidised NEA level 3 training places at the end of this, but just a few last thoughts about connecting with those hard to reach people, and any kind of thoughts or hopes from our speakers. So if we go to Stefan first.
Thank you. So one thing that we did try to do is really in the focus groups, think about what a seldom heard or underrepresented demographic would look like. who are the groups that we want to engage with. And so that's throughout the sort of living lab process, we were going back to that and exploring whether and to what extent we were sort of meeting that, as it were, target, and what the challenges were about around that. And I think you have to, if you want to genuinely work with groups who are underrepresented, you have to know exactly who they are, and you have to have a sense, and you have to arrive at an understanding of what those groups are, and you have to try to get them represented also in the design of your advice and in the actual, so they're not just spoken to, but they're engaged in the process. So yeah, I think that's something that I would say, I don't know how well we did it, but at least we sort of try to think about it. And I think there's a lot more to be done on that front in the future.
Thank you very much. Jay, any hopes or thoughts?
I've just seen something that was it Sydney put there, that Ilford Transition Town is not on that list.
Which
so
list?
yeah, Sydney Charles. Thank you, Sydney. So I will look into it. So we are in London Borough of Redbridge. Ilford is not a sort of separate borough, but we should have been listed there under Redbridge.
Yeah, that was a list, a mayor list per borough of who he's paying the warmer homes money to do the work. Shine usually, and the other ones that you said, Alex. But it's just, I didn't see Ilford on the list.
Yeah,
oh, no.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. That's because you're a subset of a larger borough in Ilford, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like I am in my borough. So
I mean, the only thing I can say that because as Ilford Transition Town, we've got quite good connections and links with the different community centres and faith places and so on in Ilford. And also Ilford is part of Redbridge, and we are very much like Ilford focused. It's a decision we made right in the beginning that we, as Transition Town, you have to be more local, that there's no way that we could sort of cover all of London Borough of Redbridge. And we are hoping to do more sessions, to have more trainers through more training, and also have more sessions in community centres. But I've got some good ideas from today's meeting. I think food banks and coffee mornings and so on. So that will be another idea to explore. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Because essentially, your project has been in a hyperlocal approach, using ad hoc interactions to connect with these seldom heard from groups. And at the other end of the scale, we've got Shine London, that's been established for many years now and has a pan-London approach, and very much based on referral networks, because they've had that time to establish those. So whether you're at the kind of smaller end and just starting out, or you're at the other end, there's still kind of new avenues to explore. There's still a huge need, and you can hear how busy Nicola is, that is a real call to all of us. And I loved what Stefan said about having a national energy service like the National Health Service. Yes, we do. That National Energy Advice Service. Yes, please. And I would just like to thank all of our speakers today, and especially for Nicola to come and join us as well. And best wishes to your other household member who's not so well.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. I've got 3 minor shout outs to do. One, we've got Community Energy England actually have a national project offering subsidized training for groups that want to train up energy advisors with the level 3 City and Guilds energy awareness qualification. These normally cost about £1,000 each for this 3-day course. However, next week in Leeds, there's 2 places going. I think it's £350 to attend. However, there are bursary options if that could be a huge barrier for a group to find that money. Also support available for expenses, i.e. travel and accommodation, to get that. My esteemed colleague has just launched the poll to find whether this was actually useful, interesting way to spend your Friday lunchtime. The second shout out I will do is we've got a community energy advisors event coming up next Wednesday evening. I can put a note, the link in the chat in a moment when I hand over for the last shout out, which will be from Flavia, my colleague from Chelsea, and I can see she's in the room. And we also have the 6th, the last in this series of fuel poverty lunchtime Friday afternoon sessions coming up. It's either going to be on energy efficiency and behaviour change, or deep dive focus on the GLA, the Warmer Homes programme, the London Fuel Poverty Partnership that's been relaunched recently. We're not sure which one it's going to go towards, but keep an eye. You can book on the Eventbrite link now, but we'll know by the end of next week which lunchtimes focus it will be. And the third thing I would like to hand over to is to Flavia, if you just want to say, like, we're now taking people's time up that they're choosing to stay on. So if people start munching sandwiches, don't take it personally.
Thanks, Alex. Just a shout out, through Chelsea, we're running a program called the Warmer Homes Advocates, and it's a program to support voluntary sector and energy advice organizations to get people through the Warmer Homes grant program. We're offering a 2.5-hour training, which is like a top to tail explanation of how the Warmer Home grant works, so that it can take as little energy on your side as possible to run through it. And then if you wanted to also take it one step further, there's also like an incentive scheme involved. I'm going to put my email conversation about it. All right, thank you.
Flavia, just to interrupt there and just to say, that's the scheme, isn't it, where households can get between £5,000 and £25,000 for really effective measures? I think it's worth just saying that.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm isn't assuming everybody knows what it is, but it's not the case. So it's there's a scheme, yeah. So it's to have really a juicy set of energy efficiency measures for low income or houses on benefits across London. And there's a bit of a time, it's a bit time sensitive. So if it's something of interest, do get in touch with me.
What is the deadline, Flavia? I can't remember.
It's a rolling deadline, but it's on a first come, first serve basis.
Oh, okay, sure. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Stefan. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was a real interesting session for me, but I am obviously a little bit biased because this is my living and breathing
Can't imagine
reality.
why.
I don't know why. Energy geeks of the world unite.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope
pleasure,
we can stay in touch.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Yes,
Thank
stay
you.
in touch.
All the best. Bye.
And
thank you.
lastly, I'd just like to thank everybody for giving up your Friday lunchtime while she desperately tries to scrabble and find the right link. There we go. And one moment, copy. Can't do two things at once. Hang on.
So while you're doing that, can I just pop in and say, with the Warmer Homes and stuff like the grants, we would do from start to finish up with them. You know, sometimes it's quite hard form. We may need some form. They may ask for like proof of income or something, but we will do the whole form with them. So if they need support, we'll do start to finish, just to let you guys know.
Yeah, if there's one-off people, that is definitely Shines and or your other local provider is a really good way to help someone through navigate that process. And because this leads to air source heat pumps, solid board insulation, double glazing, all the stuff that will really help people save energy and money and
all the good stuff.
And connecting people with that funding is an absolute key benefit of doing this energy advice work, as well as helping them out immediately. So we have got a big ask, a lot on our plates, and I just want to thank everybody for their interaction today. This recording will be on the session. When will that be up? do you reckon, Catherine?
Well, now I have working Wi-Fi. It might be up by the end of the day.
Well, goodness me.
But if
we're
not,
in-
by the end of next week.
Oh, okay, that's a big difference. Okay, so if there was anything that you needed to go back over and any feedback in the meantime, and thank you so much for everything that you're doing out there to help those people that really need it. Yes, so thanks a
Thank
lot for
you.
joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.